Ever scroll through pages of search results on a website and wonder,
How it all works.
yeah, how does that actually work
Right.
behind the scenes? Today's deep dive
Yeah.
takes us into the world of databases
Okay.
as we unpack efficient pagination with SQLite and PHP.
It's one of those things you encounter all the time online and you don't even
Right.
realize how much thought goes into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're talking about displaying those next page buttons,
Yeah.
without drowning the user in a sea of data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Our source material for this deep dive,
Okay.
a technical tutorial on efficient paging in SQLite, uses the example of a student database.
A great example to illustrate the concepts.
Yeah.
The tutorial starts with basic queries,
Okay.
which is like laying the groundwork,
Hmm.
and then dives into the crucial aspect of security with parameterized queries.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of parameterized queries,
Okay.
can you walk me through
Sure.
the fundamental steps of implementing pagination? What's the logic behind it?
Imagine you have a massive spreadsheet.
Okay.
You wouldn't want to display all the rows at once.
No.
Pagination lets you break down that spreadsheet
Right.
into manageable chunks.
Okay.
You define how many rows to show per page,
Right.
and then use parameters in your database query to specify which chunk to fetch.
So it's like telling the database, give me page 3 with 10 entries per page.
Exactly.
Okay.
A key parameter is the start value.
Okay.
This tells the database where to begin fetching the data.
Got it.
Let's say you're on page 3 with 10 entries per page.
Okay.
Your start value would be 20, indicating that you want to skip the first 2 pages worth of data.
That makes sense. So those previous and next buttons on websites,
Right.
they're essentially manipulating this start value in the background
Precisely.
to load the appropriate data chunk.
The tutorial provides PHP code examples showing how to dynamically calculate the start value for these navigation buttons,
Cool.
ensuring a seamless user experience.
Yeah.
They even highlight the current page, making it crystal clear where the user is within the data set.
It's fascinating how much thought goes into making something seemingly simple,
It is.
like flipping through pages, works seamlessly.
Yeah.
But earlier you mentioned security with something called parameterized queries.
Right.
What's the deal with those?
Right, because we can't just send any old start value to the database without some safeguards in place.
Yeah.
That's where parameterized queries come in.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
How do parameterized queries actually make this whole process more secure? It sounds like we're talking about protecting our database from malicious attacks.
You hit the nail on the head. Imagine someone tampering with the start value in the URL, trying to inject malicious code into your database.
Cool.
A nightmare scenario.
Absolutely, like a hacker slipping through the back door. So how do parameterized queries prevent that?
Think of it this way with a parameterized query. You're not directly embedding the start value into the SQL query itself.
Okay.
Instead, you're using placeholders, which are like blank spaces in a form.
So instead of writing the actual data right into the instructions, we're leaving spots for it to be filled in later.
Precisely. You send those instructions, the query with the placeholders, to the database separately from the actual data. The start value in this case. This separation is key. The database treats them as distinct entities.
So even if someone tries to sneak in malicious code disguised as the start value, the database won't fall for it.
Exactly. The database sees those placeholders and thinks, okay, I'm expecting some data here, but it's not part of the actual instructions. This effectively neutralizes any potential harm from SQL injection attempts.
That's incredibly clever.
Right.
It's like having a separate security checkpoint for data, ensuring only legitimate values get through.
A perfect analogy.
I like it.
And the tutorial dives into how to implement this in PHP using PDO, PHP data objects.
Got it.
It even shows the code for using PDO's bind-param method, which is how you link those placeholders to your actual data values securely.
PDO, bind param.
Yeah.
We're getting into some technical specifics here. Before we go further,
Sure.
Can you remind me what's special about PDO?
Of course. Remember, we're focusing on SQLite in this particular deep dive. Well, PDO is like a universal translator for databases. It provides a consistent way to interact with different database systems, not just SQLite.
So instead of learning a whole new language, if we switch databases down the line, we can stick with PDO.
Precisely. This can be a major advantage in terms of code portability and maintainability. The tutorial highlights how PDO provides a level of abstraction that can make your life as a developer much easier.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've got PDO for flexibility parameterized queries for security.
Right.
How does the actual code come together for pagination?
Yeah.
Does the tutorial show us how to build this out?
It does. It provides clear PHP snippets for constructing the SQL query.
Good.
You'll see the limit clause being used,
Okay.
which is crucial for pagination. This clause lets you specify how many records to fetch and from which point in the data set.
So the limit clause is where we define those page size chunks we were talking about earlier.
Yes. The tutorial uses a simple example with the select statement targeting a table named student.
Okay.
You'd typically specify which columns you want to retrieve, keeping things efficient.
All right. No need to overload things with unnecessary data.
Yeah.
But what about those previous and next buttons? We can't forget those. How does the code handle dynamically generating those links?
That's where things get even more interesting. The tutorial shows how to calculate the appropriate start values for those links based on the current page.
Okay.
And display those values in the URL. This allows users to navigate seamlessly between different pages of results.
This is all starting to click now. The tutorial even mentions using colors to highlight the currently active page, which is a nice touch.
Yeah.
But earlier you mentioned something called the SQLite 3 driver.
Yeah.
How does that fit into all of this? Is that another way to interact with our SQLite database?
You're right on the money with that observation. Yeah. While PDO offers that fantastic flexibility we talked about, sometimes you might choose to use a database-specific driver, like SQLite 3.
Okay.
Especially if you're certain you won't be switching to a different database system.
So it's like choosing between a Swiss Army knife and a really high-quality dedicated Phillips head screwdriver. Both can get the job done,
right? But
sometimes one is a more specialized tool for the task at hand.
A great analogy. The SQLite 3 driver can potentially offer slightly better performance for SQLite-specific tasks.
Okay.
However, PDO's adaptability for different databases is a huge plus in many situations.
Got it. It sounds like the tutorial does a great job of showcasing both approaches and explaining when you might choose one over the other. I'm curious, though, the tutorial uses a relatively small student database for its examples. What happens when we're dealing with, say, millions of records? Surely simple pagination would start to struggle under that kind of load, right?
You're absolutely right to consider that when you're dealing with massive data sets, simple pagination might not be enough. You need to start thinking about optimization. And thankfully,
there are ways to make pagination work smoothly, even with huge data sets. What's the next level up from what we've discussed so far?
Exactly. The tutorial hints at a few advanced techniques, but let's dive a bit deeper.
Yeah.
Imagine you're searching for a specific book in a massive library. Flipping through every page of every shelf would take forever, right?
It would be a nightmare. I'd rather just give up and buy the book online.
Exactly. That's where indexes come in. Think of them like those catalog cards libraries used to have.
Right.
They tell you exactly where a book is located without having to search manually.
Okay.
In database terms, indexing specific columns used for sorting and pagination can drastically speed up data retrieval.
So instead of the database having to scan through millions of rows every time someone clicks next page,
right,
it can jump right to the relevant section.
Precisely.
Wow.
It's like having a shortcut directly to the information you need. Now imagine you're frequently accessing certain pages of results.
Okay.
Like the first page of search results for a popular query. Instead of calculating and fetching those results every single time, you could store a snapshot of them in a cache.
So it's like having a little notepad on your desk where you jot down frequently used phone numbers so you don't have to look them up in the phone book every time.
Exactly. Caching can significantly reduce database load and make your application feel incredibly snappy. There are even more advanced techniques you could explore depending on the complexity of your application and the size of your dataset.
This is really making me think about the hidden complexities behind those simple next page buttons. It's a whole world of optimization and performance tuning.
It really is. And while the tutorial we've been discussing focuses on the fundamentals,
right,
it lays a strong foundation for exploring these more advanced concepts.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding the tools at your disposal and choosing the right approach for your specific needs.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We've gone from the basics of pagination to the importance of parameterized queries for security, and even touched upon advanced techniques like indexing and caching.
And we've seen how PDO provides a flexible and efficient way to interact with SQLite databases, especially when paired with secure coding practices.
Exactly. It's amazing how much information we've unpacked from this single tutorial. I feel equipped to implement efficient and secure pagination in my own projects now.
That's what it's all about. Remember, efficient pagination is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to building high-performing web applications, but it's a crucial piece.
Right.
And understanding these concepts can make a world of difference for your users.
Absolutely. To our listeners, if you're looking to level up your database skills and build smoother, more responsive applications, mastering pagination is a fantastic place to start.
And always remember, the journey of learning never ends. There's always something new to discover in the world of software development.
Couldn't agree more. Until next time, keep those databases hunting and those pages turning smoothly.